Social media is the lifeblood of our daily lives. We're emotionally triggered 24/7 by posts and memes we see on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. But social media lacks context, which is why I'm here. My name is Crystal Jordan, and it's time for a social conversation with clarity. Let's get crystal clear. Hi, and welcome to another edition of Let's Get Crystal Clear. I'm your host, Crystal Jordan, and you know why we're here. Every week, we take a social media conversation that's gone viral and add a little context to it, right? Kind of flush it out a little bit, because watching something on social, you get about 60 seconds of a video. It doesn't allow us to really understand the true context. Today, we're talking about a very sensitive subject, especially with the LGBT community. We saw Tokyo Vanity from Love and Hip Hop Atlanta went live and explained that her brother was engaging with a trans woman, and she decided to tell her brother that the woman was trans. Well, people had a lot to say in the comments suggesting that she should not have disclosed this woman's origin, that she should have allowed her to do it herself. So it got pretty heated, and I thought, what a great conversation to have in a space with respect, and also just, we want to make sure that we're educating people and being able to ask questions. I've invited a good friend of mine, publicist and producer Chanel O'Conner, who is also a woman going through a trans experience. She's going to join me after the break, and we're going to talk about it. Stay tuned. This is Let's Get Crystal Clear. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Let's Get Crystal Clear. I'm excited about today's conversation because although it's a difficult conversation, it's one that is definitely needed. And I'm so thankful to my guest today, Chanel O'Conner,
thank you,
for being here with me. Now, Chanel and I, we are PR sisters. We have that in common, right?
Yeah.
You have a PR company called PR Mentality Network, and then you also do some producing, because us PR girls are we're multifaceted.
Multifaceted. We have multiple layers.
Absolutely.
And we're always looking for the next way to expand, because you can't really retire.
You cannot.
In PR.
You cannot.
The money is not what people think it is.
Yes.
The perks are better than the money.
Exactly.
Really.
You're right.
But we have to use what we have to expand out and create legacies and create residual wealth, and
absolutely.
So I'm happy to be here.
I think PR teaches you that you have to be able to do a lot of different things, because you are, in some cases you're acting like a manager, in some cases you're acting like an assistant, in some cases you're acting like a producer. So I developed all these skills, and it was like, okay, now I can use these to do other things, to actually make money for myself. Yeah.
That's how I, even for me, I just have to figure out what I want to do. And a lot of what I do is I produce people. Yeah. Just not on television. So if you put that skill into TV,
then voila.
Magic.
Well, that's why I thought you were the perfect person. And again, I'm so thankful that you agreed to do this.
Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. Because there are all these questions. This show, our goal is to take conversations that are started on social media and misunderstood and add additional context, right? And so there's been so many conversations, but one that just recently went viral was Tokyo Vanity put a post up explaining that she told her brother that he was dating a trans woman, right? And I don't think he knew. At least that's what it's presented as. He did not know. And so she told him. So a lot of people are in the post went viral. People are giving their opinion. And to me, of course, my instinct was, of course, she's not wrong. She should definitely have told her brother. I would tell my brother anything about anybody he's dating, because the role of a sister, especially a big sister, is to look out for the brother, right? And to make sure that he has all the information. So if it's somebody that, whatever it is, I would definitely share that. So I wanted to hear from you and just have this conversation, because there's so much in this community that people that are not a part of the community don't understand, want to understand, but don't. So let's start with that question. Okay. Was Tokyo wrong for telling her brother?
Okay, so I'm not going to say Tokyo was wrong.
Okay.
But I am going to say, oftentimes, okay, so let me preface this by saying this. I have an opinion, and my opinion should not be garnered for the majority of the trans community. Okay. I'm not advocating for their rights. I'm not advocating for how they feel. This is strictly my opinion and how I feel based on my experiences. I just want to preface that.
Okay. And then before you start, you said that you would like to be referred to as a woman with has had a trans experience.
Well, the word trans woman is more so for people to identify what I walk into the room as, how I prefer to be handled or treated. But you wouldn't necessarily say, this is a trans woman. You would say this is a woman, and she happens to be a woman of trans experience.
Okay.
So you would be a woman, but you are a cis woman. Some people don't like that. I'm not a cis woman. I'm a female. I'm a woman. But that was created by the mainstream LGBTQIA, not the black LGBTQIA.
Okay.
Let's make that clear. It was
Okay.
by the mainstream LGBTQIA.
Okay.
Because a lot of people in corporate America did not know how to respect other people. So it's more of like an identification for respect. It was created biologically for people to know she was biologically born a woman.
Right.
But you don't introduce yourself saying, I'm biologically born a woman.
Right.
You introduce yourself saying, I'm a woman. So now in certain spaces, you have to say, I'm a cis woman, or I am a cis man, or so that person knows automatically, okay, so she's biological. But you don't say that. It was just something to kind of level the playing field. So although I am a trans woman, a proud black trans woman, I am a woman first of the trans experience.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
That is it. And I will say, I heard that term a few years ago, cis woman, and I was like, I've been this my whole life. You cannot tell me that I have to refer to myself differently because of what another person is going through. Like,
Right.
that seems to infringe on me a little bit. So I'm just like,
it kind of seems like it's violating your
It does.
human birthrights.
Yes.
But again, black, we don't care.
Yeah.
Like, let me tell you something. I'm very quick to tell a person what I was born as, what I transitioned into.
Okay.
Most people, especially the mainstream, and I'm not going to say white or Caucasian.
We understand what
We're
it
going
is.
to say mainstream. The mainstream side was tired of feeling like their biology of a woman was being checked.
okay.
So it was them to say, okay, well, let's come up with these terminologies for people to understand that I'm a biological woman, this is a trans woman. But again, that doesn't bother me.
Right.
People still refer to me as a he sometimes
Right.
to be funny or to use that against me to think that I'm going to be like, oh my God. No, I'm going to be like, I know what I was born as and I know what I am now.
Right.
That's me. That's my experience.
Right.
A lot of trans women would never dare say that as their experience. They would prefer to not be identified or known, and that could be dangerous for them.
Right.
But
so let's go to this question, because that is, we're getting ready to get all into that. So your perspective, and this is, I like the fact that you want to make sure you're not the spokesperson for all. But in your opinion, was there anything wrong with Tokyo sharing that she did tell her brother?
So in often environments, what Tokyo did is the same thing that regular cis women do in order to prove a point.
Okay.
I feel like, me personally, if I have a heterosexual friend and he tells me, hey, I know you're trans, I'm not, it's a lot of beautiful trans women. If you happen to see one, don't make me out here looking like no fool. And I have had straight friends to say that to me in the past. I personally would have to think about whether or not I want to expose someone of the trans experience to an individual that has taken the time out on his own accord to communicate with this individual. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, a black man who is quote unquote heterosexual or straight or I don't play them games, they would never tell a straight female this is how they truly feel or who they're having sex with. They're not going to disclose that to you. Of course, they want to do that to save public embarrassment. So of course, if you have a straight friend, he's like, man, let me know. But I can't control if he's had sex with that woman in the privacy of his own home.
You definitely
And
can.
I will not know if he's had sex with that woman in the privacy of his own home. But what I will know is he wants to make sure that in public he is not clocked or he is not embarrassed. So with Tokyo, I feel like her platform is too large to bring that type of attention to the trans community when in secret she could have just told her brother, look, I know her, she's trans, she was not born biological female, because she did an interview, she did a live interview with Hope Giselle. Hope Giselle is like a big trans advocate. She does like Fox Soul. She just did a Fox Soul interview with Dr. Umar, and she's amazing. She always speaks universally, not just for the trans girls, but for universally all people. She speaks up. And she invited Tokyo to come on her live, and Tokyo made it clear, I don't have a problem with the trans community. Whatever y'all want me to address y'all to, I'll address y'all to. But it's not necessarily Tokyo. It's the message that she gaslights towards other black women in the community to say, see, they're not even looking at the fact that she had a conversation with a trans woman to say, hey, this is how I truly feel. They don't care about that. What they care about is Tokyo was like, I don't care how you feel. If I see my brother with a trans woman, my personality trait is going to allow me to tell this man that that woman is trans. So I feel like with the majority of cis women or biologically born female, they feel like they reserve that right to do that. And my whole thing is, what's your point? Yeah, you're going to do it. What's your point? When you leave, you tell your homeboy, yeah, she's trans. If he wants to go bang her, he's still going to do it. And you're not going to know. So you are defending a culture and a community of men who at the end of the day really are not going to come forth and say, hey, I had sex with her. So you're blindly defending someone who potentially could be doing something that in your mind you thought you were trying to save him from, but he's enjoying it. And then going back home to his baby mama.
Oh. Yes.
Praise the Lord in the church.
I want to ask another question because I understand what you're saying, but I guess for me, and we do know that a lot of times a person may not share that information, right? On the other hand, I think that we have been really focused on LGBTQ rights over the last few years, right?
Few months, actually, with the Roe versus Wade, and
it continued, but we've been aware because there's been a lot more awareness put out.
Right.
But I think that everybody has rights. Everybody has rights. We all do. You know, for a long time we were fighting as African Americans to be like, and we're still fighting. Right. But there is if someone wants to know who they're sleeping with, I think they have a right to know, and a lot of times that's not disclosed. You know, I have a good friend. We probably know him in common, who shared with me that he was having a conversation with this young lady and enjoyed the conversation. Ended up going out on a date, and then the young lady actually felt guilty because she had not told him. And then when she did tell him, after that, I think they had gone out a couple of times, it made him. He had a really hard time with it because he was not open to dating someone that had went through a trans experience. And I think people have a right to their preferences. Right. So he was traumatized a bit. You know, she did come out and tell him, you know, in her own time, but I don't think he felt like he would have rather known up front, you know, before he had invested so much time.
Right.
So I guess my question to you is, do you also see the other side that if Tokyo's brother did not know, and she told him, that could have helped him from having a crisis with his own self later if he finds that out later down the road. Right. You see what I'm saying? I
feel like, number one, it's nobody's business. That's how I feel. I feel like disclosure is nobody's business. It's between the two people that are communicating.
Okay.
I oftentimes think that a lot of the times men will tell their straight counterpart or their straight females, I had this experience with this trans girl, because in their minds they may be thinking, well, what if she saw me with this girl and thought she was trans? Now I'm her looking like my sexuality is questioned. When in all actuality, trans women are not an anomaly to gay men. We are our own species of identifying to the trans woman. We're not trans men. We're not trans aliens. We're trans women. We have transitioned. The word trans is key. It's the root word to transition. We have transitioned to what we have seen in the eyes of a woman. Biologically, yes, there are a lot of men who would not feel comfortable being with the trans woman, especially men who want to have children, men who want to have natural. There's a lot of that. But my whole thing is, why tell you about his traumatizing experience? Why not just be like, it's not for me. I'm good. Thank you, but no, thank you. Now, there are, and I'm not saying that there are not trans women who don't. I don't agree with that.
Okay.
When I was dating online, even before I met my husband, and I was dating online, I would be the first sentence that came out of my mouth is, I'm a trans woman, period.
And see, that, I think that's different, right? Because then you're, and I think there's so many things that people can hide that you need to know up front, right? So if you're on a dating website, I saw this on a dating show, and a guy says, I don't have any children, right? And then it comes out that he has children. When you're dating, you have a right to prefer whatever you want. So I think the honesty is appreciated, and I think that allows a person to know exactly what they're dealing with and and if they want to, I get what you're saying. There's definitely, we still are in a place where people are not comfortable being who they are.
Right.
Right. So if a person is open, they may not want, I didn't think about the idea, they may not want a person that is,
Right.
you know, a straight woman to know, okay, I don't want her to know what I'm going through. But that doesn't mean that he's not open to doing it.
But I also want to point this out. When you do say I am a trans woman, and now you start to engage with a man who is like, okay, I don't care about that, you're beautiful. That same man who identifies as straight, who has had sex with all your homegirls, is the same man who ends up killing the trans woman that he had sex with. So I think that that's triggering to a lot of people. Me personally, I have discernment. So, and I feel like as trans people all over the world, we have a certain level of discernment, because I oftentimes tell people this: I'm not going to debate what my genitalia is. I'm not going to debate if I've had a sex change. I'm not going to debate that with you. That's my personal business.
Right, it is.
But what I am going to do essentially is remind you that I was born a man. I have the male spectrum of understanding a man, and I have transitioned into a woman. So I have the transitional spectrum of identifying or understanding a woman's point of view or perspective. So when you meet a guy and you know that things are going to be a little shaky because he may feel insecure, or you have both spectrums, which should create a stronger discernment as a trans person to say, I should be very careful with how I thread. You have to think about the community right now, right? There are a lot of trans women who are dating a lot of industry people. I know several. And these industry people have not come out the closet. These are A-list rappers, A-list actors. Some of them are married with children. And they solicit the trans woman.
Okay.
I'm not going to say that when I was on online dating or going through my process that I've never reached out to a man. I've never been the one to say, hey, how are you? Never. I created my profile. I put some cute little pictures up. I oftentimes like to cover up my cleavage. You know, I don't even like showing body parts all the time, because a lot of times the straight women will say, look at her trying to seduce him with them boobs, or trying to seduce him with this and that.
Well, the women do that all the time.
1,000%. But what do you think the trans community, we have adapted it from that.
Yeah.
I made a conscious decision to say, if I'm going to fall in love, if I'm going to meet a man, it's not going to be based on the fantasy of how I look. It's going to be on the fantasy of what he does not know exists in trans people. So even when I met my husband, for example, he'd never been in a relationship with a trans woman. Has he explored? Sure. But people would say he was on the down low. And I was like, I'm not going to come out and we're not going to. You want me to tell people that we're together? It's not going to happen. It took so long because in my mind, I'm like, you could be the next man to kill me. I could be getting to know you so well. And when your homeboy, when me and my husband when we went public, when his baby mother, outed him and, went on a radio station, Amanda Cooper show. I went on her station to do something about relationships and love with another trans girl she's in the ballroom community.
Okay.
And he came up to the station and was just like, I'm in love with her. That was my first time hearing him coming out loud. I'm like, why would you come to the radio? He's like, I wanted you to know that I cared that much. I wanted you to feel like I'm doing this not because we're in the shadows, but he lost all of his friends.
Well, I would assume that meant that he was comfortable with himself. A lot of these men are not comfortable with themselves. And I think that's a dangerous person regardless of what
I think he was comfortable with me.
Okay.
I think he really saw me beyond what he thought the trans community was, trying to out him or trying to put his business out. When he got outed by a cis hetero female, in his mind, he was just like, what am I hiding for?
Yeah.
I trust you. At the same time, I had to watch him lose all of his friends. I had to watch family members turn on him. Even at our wedding, it wasn't like the hunky-dory wedding. None of my family showed up to the wedding. He probably had 3 or 4 cousins out of a family of over 50 plus people show up. Then you also have to add the Caribbean. I'm Jamaican. He's Jamaican. You have to add that as well. So I oftentimes tell people, if you come across a trans woman, right, ask her questions, but don't question her womanhood. The same way you wouldn't expect a trans woman to look at you and say, bitch, I look better than you. You'll be like, girl, I was born this way.
Well, they do occasionally,
1,000%.
and that's part of I think the issue between trans women and what you call cis women. But I want to ask you this before we go to break. Do you think that, and this is a difficult question, but it's just real.
Yeah.
Some of the violence that happens, a lot of the violence, do you think is because the trans community is not always upfront? Because with you saying this is who I am from the very beginning, I would have just assumed that you would not have had some of the issues that some trans women have because they're not being honest. And then when you wait and then you tell someone, that does make them question themselves and their sexual orientation.
Well, this is gonna piss off a lot of people.
Well, let's do it then.
I feel like, okay, Lord, give me the words to say. I feel like there's two sides.
Okay.
I feel like trans girls know what they're doing, and it's like living on edge. It's like a drug addict. It's like that hit of, oh, he didn't clock my T. He didn't clock that I was born a man. He didn't clock that I'm passable.
Right.
It's like the land of passability. It's like
Right.
a drug. It's
Right.
like if they could get away with it, they're like, oh my God, I'm the ultimate version of a woman. But what they don't realize is there are a lot of men who will know that you're trans, have sex with you, and afterwards think that you're going to now ruin his life. So now I have to kill you. There are a lot of men who think like that. That's how a lot of these trans girls have gotten murdered. Let's be very clear. But it's also cognitive presence in their mind, to have a cognitive presence in your mind to be able to say, I was wrong. I should not have done that. And yes, even if I had a sex change, a man may not look at a sex change as being a biological vagina. He might look at that as being still, what you used to have right there. It's a mental click.
Right.
Right? So I think that on one side, there are men who know that they're trans and who say, I can't allow this to get out because my homeboys and my parents,
Okay.
boom, boom.
Right.
Then there's another side of guys who just don't know.
And
they kind of fall into this, oh my gosh, she's beautiful. And it's like they fall in love before the sex comes. And then some people hide the fact that they still have their genitalia, and then they still find a way to have sex. And that
can you understand how that would be traumatizing to somebody?
I see both sides of the spectrum, but the bigger conversation is, how do we move forward in a space where trans girls don't have to continue to feel like they have to hide? A lot of the girls feel like they have to tell a lie because men are out of control. I've had men stalk me that I've met off of a dating app. Literally will find my social media, look me up, tell me what my address is, tell me the type of clients I have going. I'm like, wait.
So they're
wait
intrigued.
a minute.
They're intrigued.
It's an obsession.
Okay.
It's not even intrigue. Intrigue is reading out, and I'm not gonna lie, guys have reached out to me, you're beautiful. And I'll be like, I'm trans, and I'll be like, oh, hell no, I'm good. Block. We ain't talking no more, that's it. I'll see you out in public, cool. But there are a lot of guys who'll be like, you're lying. Prove to me that you're not trans. It's almost like a thing. And then the thing is with biological women, what they're going through right now is you meet a guy on a dating app, and the general question for him to ask you is, were you biologically born a woman? That's more offensive than a guy having the discernment to say that's a woman. How a woman is. And it's kind of mind-blowing in the regard of people not really understanding why trans women have to cover up their gender to individuals that pursue them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you meet a guy, or, even before you got married, you meet a guy, you're not going to walk up and just say, I'm a woman. You're not going to do that.
No, and I would be offended if somebody asked me.
Right.
So I get that. We're
Right.
going to take a break, and then I want to come back because I think this conversation is definitely needed, especially what we're dealing with.
Right,
but I
right.
think that the crux of this, and hopefully what we can come to, is that people need to be comfortable with who they are.
Right,
because the violence that is happening, I do think a lot of it is dishonesty, but it's also uncomfortability and being not true with yourself, right? And so, but this has to stop. So please stay tuned. We're coming right back with more Let's Get Crystal Clear with today's guest, Chanel O'Conner. Stay tuned. All right, we're back. This is Let's Get Crystal Clear. Of course, I'm your host, Crystal Jordan, and we are talking about one of the very sensitive topics that we see going viral consistently on social media is the question about trans men and trans women, and should they have to share their orientation or their biological what they were biologically? Should that have to happen or not? There's so much going on. And my guest, of course, is the very fabulous Chanel O'Conner. Thank you so much for being here and being open to having this conversation. Before the break, we were talking about the violence and that's happened with a lot of trans women, right? And the what's behind this, because this definitely needs to stop. I think everybody understands that it needs to stop.
Right.
But I like the fact that you brought up there are two issues going on. There's a lot of men that are engaging in relationships with trans women and then not wanting to live up to what they've done or not wanting to be outed. So the violence against the trans woman is almost a way to erase what they've done, right? And then on the other hand, we do have trans women that want to be with men that don't know what their background is. I was reading something in preparation for today's show, and it was saying that, and even watched Secret Society 2, very good film. Congratulations to everybody that put that together. It's a really good film. But there's like a fascination with a lot of trans women to be with a man who is quote unquote straight. I don't understand that. To me, that's very strange, because it's almost like, why would you seek out a community that is ideally not open to you? Can you explain that to me?
So, I can. I've actually lost friends who thought my husband was gay or thought my husband was queer. And I'm like, well, why don't you go tell my husband how you feel and see how that works out for you? I feel like I identify as a woman of trans experience. So why would I want to date a gay man? That's like saying to a biological woman to go date a lesbian or to date, a female who dresses like a man. It's the same thing. I don't want to date a gay man.
Okay.
That's not my preference. And it's not about seeking out, because I'm going to tell you this, there are a large group of women in the trans community who like dating gay, feminine men.
Okay.
A lot of them are the dominant forces in the relationship, and that's just what it is.
Right.
But when you see them, you don't look at them and say, oh, she's bending him over. You know what I'm saying? You don't say that. You would automatically assume that the guy is doing the bending, as Janet Jackson would say for Color Girl. So you're doing the bending. But no, it's not that. It's literally the opposite of what the perception is. When you look at a trans woman in a relationship, I could talk about my relationship. I've never wanted to penetrate my husband. I've never penetrated him. He has never even seen down there.
Okay.
He just hasn't.
He just
1,000%.
Okay, so it seems the idea of what's straight or gay is connected to how the sexual act happens. Okay.
And I think it's also a man's masculinity and it's how he identifies. I've had friends tell me, well, you were born a dude, so your man got to be gay. And I'm just like, wow. So you really sit up in my face and you're literally telling me that you still think that and these are gay men that I'm having these conversations with.
Okay.
That have said this to me. I'm like, so you still think that I'm a dude? And they'd be like, yes. I'd be like, oh, wow, thank you so much. My ID says female. My birth certificate says female. My marriage license says that my husband was married to a woman. So even if they overturn Roe versus Wade, that ain't got nothing to do with me. You know what I'm saying? And again, what I will say is, it is not for the world to determine how a person identifies.
Right.
It's their own experience. Just like you can't tell a woman that she can't wake up tomorrow and like vagina.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's going to be accepted.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If
a
majority of the time,
more acceptable.
It's more accepted because that's like a fantasy for men to see two women.
Absolutely.
It's also a fantasy for a lot of straight men to have sex with a trans woman because in their mind it's curiosity.
Right.
I don't believe in phobia. I don't believe in transphobia. I don't believe in homophobia. I believe that people who are homophobic or transphobic have had a negative experience and that has caused them fear of that negative experience or trauma, as you would say.
Right.
A person who literally screams homophobia or transphobia is the same person who would hit you up asking for head at the end of the night.
I believe that.
1,000%.
Yeah.
So for me, I see a lot of trans women, but then again, like my wedding was filmed for a television TV show. I'll be the first black trans woman to marry a cis hetero man in the world. The first. Why has not that become more normalized? It's
well,
not.
I think there's just a lot of gray areas, and I'll say me and you say you. So for me, I am attracted to straight men, right? So if I met a trans man who had female parts or was born a female, I would not be interested in that because I am interested in biological men.
Right.
So that doesn't make me dislike.
No,
that's just my preference.
That's just your preference.
Right. So,
but if you had dated a man and he told you that he was with a trans woman for 10 years, would that turn you off? Would you look at him and say, "Oh my God, this guy is gay," or "That's not going to turn me on"? He still has his male parts.
Right.
He just was with a trans woman who may look just as beautiful as you.
Right. I guess for me, and I'm just being honest, is I would probably be thrown off because I would think whatever he was into with her, it may be different with me.
But what if she was a post-op trans woman?
We're getting into all that. See, I don't even know what that would be. So in the Secret Society, the movie, the girl goes through the actual
SRS. Right.
And it seems it's sex is not as easy. It's just different, right? I'm assuming it's different. I don't know how all that works. But I would just assume, just like I really wouldn't date a guy that has consistently dated women out of my race, because I would think he probably is into something that I'm not.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but that doesn't mean that I have an issue. It just means that's my preference. And I think everybody has a right. There are a lot of men that won't date a woman that is over 125 pounds.
Right.
It's okay.
Everybody
That's what they want. We all
right.
So I think that's one of my issues. I think that everything is just so sensitive, and we have to just be understanding that everybody has a right to what they want. Now, let me ask you this, because one of the other issues that comes up, again, on social media, is with children. So children, if a child decides that they are, or, goes through the process, and I need to ask you just, how did that process work for you? But when you have children competing at school, right? So there's issues with, okay, if this is a trans team and there's a lot of trans on this team, they have a physiological advantage over a biological born woman.
Well, depending on their treatment.
Okay.
So I feel like when it comes to sports, there needs to be extensive tests. When you start on hormone replacement therapy, whether on testosterone or estrogen, your bones become brittle. For women transitioning to men, they start growing facial hair. Their breast starts to lose density. For female, from male to female, our boobs start to plump up. We lose bone density. We become soft. Our skin texture changes. My transitional story is completely different than a lot of girls and we could talk about that, after. But what I will say is, like, even people like Zaya Wade, the Dwayne Wade situation, who is the world to tell a parent how to accept their child? Because this is the thing. You have children who will come to you and tell you at 7 to 8 years old, "I don't feel comfortable in my body." I was one of those children. And they disregarded it. They took me to
when you felt like that, what did you see something? I'm interested to know what was that experience like. I come from
a Pentecostal Church of God in Christ, in prophecy, City Mission Church, Jamaican congregation. My father was the pastor. I was the pastor's child. My mother was the first lady.
Wow.
And I was sheltered. Couldn't go to sleepovers.
We have that in common.
Yep.
I grew up
Couldn't
Pentecostals as well.
It was not, I didn't have a normal upbringing. It's like my home was Jamaica. I had to explore America. My parents also sent me to Jamaica to go to it was basically an all boys conforming school. It's what the mainstream world will call it. It's almost like they send you there to kind of like pray the gay out of you.
Okay, I've heard about that. Okay, so go back. So when you told your parents that you didn't feel comfortable,
I never told my parents. my actions, and they would react to my actions.
What actions?
Like putting my hand at my hip, doing little stuff like that. My mom would be like, "Move your hand. That's that you're not a girl." Like little stuff like that. But I can remember being 7, 8 years old, drawing myself in a wedding dress. You know what I'm saying? I always have felt disconnected from my body. I also know that I was living in Little Jamaica, so I couldn't go and say, "Mommy, Daddy, take me to the doctor. I feel like I feel like I'm having an issue." I started my hormone process when I was 12.
How did you do
I don't
that?
even have an Adam's apple.
How did you do that?
I found someone. I used to sneak out of the house and go to the club.
At 12?
At 12 years old.
Wow.
I did, and I would dress.
And someone helped you, obviously an
An
adult.
older individual. He was a big producer that I met at a club, and he got me a fake ID. He got me a fake everything, and he saw the torment in me. He wasn't trying to have sex with me or anything.
Okay.
He
I was like, that sounds a little...
almost like a big brother.
It's a little concerning.
But when I got older, it felt like he was grooming me to become like his girlfriend.
Of course.
But back then...
You didn't know. Because you don't know. At 12, you don't know what's happening. But looking at it now, you can look back and say, that probably wasn't...
Right.
That's probably what's
but for me, I also had my virginity. I also lost my virginity to a female cousin in my family.
So she molested you. That's what it is. Because I know that men don't see that. We don't look at molestation when it comes from a woman to a little boy as molestation.
She was closer to my age, so I can't even say she introduced me.
Were you willing? Were you a willing participant?
Honestly, I just wanted to feel loved.
Okay.
So that was like like I guess the attention that I was getting. When I got older, I realized that I was completely violated. I did. I felt like, I should have had the chance to, give myself away to where I felt like giving myself away to. And it, I had other sexual experiences with women coming up in high school, and like the last person I even tried to, I threw up on her in the middle of that. Yikes. I was just like, I gagged. It was like, but I've never felt connected to my body. But I couldn't go to my parents and tell my parents I don't feel connected. So I started taking black market hormones, and I just started to transition myself, but I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
By the time I got to Morehouse, I had boobs. They were huge, and I didn't know why. They used to hurt really bad.
Because you're taking these hormones that is creating this.
And I was not prescribed hormones. So even going back to the question about children, I feel like estrogen is a definite factor of a transition for a child, especially when you're younger. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like if you have a child that, and I don't believe that someone like that Leah Thomas girl, no shade to her, but I'm just gonna speak it real. It looked like you was losing as a boy, and you saw an opportunity to transition to a girl and join the girls team, and now you're a champion. That to me, I would have waited a good few years. You know what I'm saying? That's the story that you lead with. It's not that I'm a great swimmer, because you could have just said you didn't have to tell people that you were trans.
Yeah.
It ain't nobody's business. A person could come in here right now and say, just a tranny, and I'm gonna say, prove it. Prove it. If they can't prove it, then that's the argument. What you gonna sit up here and tell me about myself? You can't prove nothing. You have a theory of what you think in your mind, but you're not gonna make me feel inferior in the spaces in which I exist because you're uncomfortable. Right. But I do feel like in the school, medically, there needs to be an extensive check. Yeah. How long have you been on estrogen? How long have you been on, how long have you done this?
Certain body, like when you're going through puberty, little boy, I learned very early on that a really skinny little boy was much stronger than myself. Right. Like that's just it, right? So I remember in middle school, I had a friend that I was just playing around with, and he was super skinny, so I thought I could just kind of push him. He turned around and pushed me up against the locker, and I was like, oh, he's strong. Got strong, right? It's different, right? We may be the same, because it's just it's just physically,
the testosterone that builds up the muscle mass.
So even if, because I think with one of the issues when people are trans is you don't know if they're on hormones, if they're not, if they've gone through the genital reassignment. You don't know any of that. Right. So for them to be competing, I feel like it's unfair because you don't know what's happening. Like I don't know how that is.
I feel like
fair.
Number one, disclosure should not be a reason why a person can't compete. I also feel like schools need to start becoming more inclusive.
Okay.
in their sports arenas. It's 2022. You know what I'm saying? I feel like everything is evolving and growing. If you have a new sector of people identifying in a various gender, I feel like you should have sports, just like for special ed. You wouldn't put a child in special ed who has autism
Right.
to compete in games.
Right.
It would be a fair disadvantage.
I agree.
So you have special ed sports where they can go and play with other kids of special ed. So I feel like there should be programs implemented, whether it's a national program
Yeah.
where they can go and compete with other individuals in
I
that
agree
same
with that.
spectrum.
Right, because otherwise they're gonna keep beating the girls.
1,000%. But
They
I
gonna keep
also,
beating
but
the
I
girls.
feel like individuals like Jazz, for example, Jazz Jennings from TLC. If she was to go compete on a college sports team at Harvard, I would not question or debate the fact that she was born biologically male. She started her transition when she was 5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
So her muscle mass is not that. When you look at Jazz Jennings, you don't say, hey, she looks like a trans woman.
Yeah.
But you know because she put it out there on Front Street for the world to know.
Right.
You know, so I feel like even with Zaya Wade, you know, I look at Dwayne Wade and I see so many comments towards him, like he's living through his daughter. This is a straight man married to a whole black, beautiful queen. You know what I'm saying? Who could not have children and still stuck with her throughout the surrogate process. I'm saying he's perfect,
No, we're not
not saying
saying
he's perfect. So when I watch people like him stand in support, it's almost like because he's just not coming out saying something about it, people automatically think, oh, this is wrong. He's been dealing with this for years.
Yeah.
In private.
Yeah.
It's at a place right now where why are you going to allow the public to dictate the narrative of your child when you have a platform large enough to do that yourself?
Right.
So-
I think people don't know and don't understand the story. So for me, another question I have is like, when you feel these when you go through this as a child, because there's so much going on with children, period. Like you don't know who you are, you're trying to figure out all those things.
Right.
But when how would you suggest to a parent to know because tampering with your child's hormones and things like that could go terribly wrong.
Right.
If later there are children that later decide, I don't want this, and then it's too late. I would assume.
Right.
I'm not really so how would you suggest a parent handle that, and knowing if they really do need to go to the doctor with their child and move forward, or if it's something that they need to hold on and wait and see how the child handles things?
So I can't speak for how other parents have maneuvered their children, but I'm a black trans woman and I'm planning on having a child through surrogate. If my child comes to me at 6 years old and says, Mommy, I feel like I was born in the wrong body, I'm going to monitor it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pay attention. They don't know what the hormones are. They don't know what the doctor.
And I checked. My son at 5 did tell me that he was Spider-Man, and he decided that he wanted to be Spider-Man. So I couldn't. Yeah, he wore the Spider-Man suit every day. It outgrew it, but I'm just saying, like, if I took that to where he was like, I don't want to be Stone, I want to be Spider-Man. There's certain things kids are going through that they...
But I would not compare a fictional character, a cartoon fictional character, to a person's gender identity. Because I will tell you this, when I was 6, 7 years old, I knew I was born in the wrong body. I felt it.
Yeah.
Did I have an outlet to go talk to someone? No. My parents essentially... They have nothing to do with them. They have nothing to do with me. And it's sad. These are the people that gave birth to me, that raised me up, that I was a straight A student my whole life. But
And it's just solely because of this?
Because of my transition, because of being trans. It's not because I'm a thief. It's not because I ended up a prostitute. It's not because I'm out here in the world doing wrong.
Yeah.
I'm actually a good person in the world. But it's the simple fact of their Bible and their cultural religion says that I'm an abomination. And if they support or love me, then they're sinning towards their master. That's how it is, essentially. So for me, the way that I look at it is, this is how I look at it, right? Everyone is able to identify when people are human. Treat people as human.
Right.
Now, I could be a trans woman and I could be the nastiest person to you, and that would be a reason not to like me. I don't like Chanel because she's nasty to me. But if I have great experiences with you, we have great rapport. You may not see each other every time, but when we do, it's love. You have no reason to hate me, except for something internally that says,
Yeah.
and it's not because I did something wrong, because I'm going to tell you this, and it's crazy. In my therapy process, I have figured this out. I was raised to hate myself by my parents who are phobic. So I had to learn how to love myself in a way that my parents didn't even teach me. Because I was raised by them to hate people like me. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of times with children, you have to monitor your child.
Yeah.
Children don't know what hormones are, but someone like Zaya Wade, who gets up to an age where she could Google, and there's so much content out right now on the internet about stuff, you're questioning like, okay, well, how did she go from, if she was born a man, how does she look like this? So people you become curious. Would I tell my child at 14 years old, we're going to go to the doctor, you're going to get on hormone therapy? No. That doesn't mean that at 18, I'm going to be like, get out my house, don't talk to me.
Right.
At 18, if that's what you choose to do, I'm going to be there with you. I'm going to come with you. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to make sure that the doctor that you're going to are right. But I'm not going to introduce something to my child that they become obsessed with it. And that becomes how they lead in life. I think for me, it's just raising a human being who is kind, who has manners, who respects themselves.
Who's a good person.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when you transition, it's a mental transition first. A lot of girls transition their body, but their minds are still stuck in the boy's mind. So you see a lot of trans women who act out, and you're like, well, girl, what is she? Because she still acts like a little boy. She doesn't have an aura to her. I meet people like, oh my Chanel, you're so classy and you're so... And I'm like, girl, I transitioned my mind. I've never had plastic surgery. Do I want plastic surgery? Yes, but I'm 33.
I think most women want plastic surgery.
Right, girl. But when you have a career and you're working, you don't think every single day like, I need to go look like this, I need to look that.
Yeah.
A lot of my trans sisters had to be forced into sex work. That's their job. That's so I understand, because that is what they have been forced into. Then they have to upgrade themselves if they want the money, if they want the client. They don't use their brain, they use their body.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as strippers. It's the same.
It's exact
aura
thing. And it still plays into the oppression from a patriarchal setup. But we could have like part 2, part 3, and part 4 on this. But I just, first of all, again, want to thank you so much. I know
welcome.
We've known each other for a long time. We
For
always
a
have
long,
good
long
energy.
time.
We've worked together before.
Yeah.
But I want to say to you that love, and I was raised the same way as you were in a Pentecostal church, but I think that what we are not hearing more of is love. Love conquers everything, and we should be able to love each other regardless of if we agree or not. So I could say my child may be doing something that I don't understand or I don't agree with, but I will always love that child.
And I don't know what that feels like.
Everyone, and you deserve that, and I'm so sorry that you don't have that.
Let me tell you something. I'm a survivor. I'm not a victim.
Amen. I know, but I'm telling you that you deserve more than that.
Thank
and I'm
you.
so sorry that you did not get that.
Yeah. I could give it to myself now.
You can. Yeah, that's what you're doing. I'm proud of you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We'll be right back with more Let's Get Crystal Clear. All right. Again, I want to really thank Chanel O'Conner, and even those of you watching. I know this conversation is very sensitive, but we're not going to be able to understand each other if we don't ask questions and if we aren't open to listen. I know that there's a lot of speculation about these type of topics, and there's so much more we can talk about. I actually want to make sure that we invite Chanel back again to have a more in-depth conversation. But for today, I believe that we talked a little bit about and realized that honesty is always the best policy, whether that's being honest about your original biology or that's being honest about your sexual preferences, your lifestyle preferences. Learning how to be comfortable and honest in your own skin is the first key to being able to be a person of character and integrity. I hope you guys enjoyed today's conversation. I hope it enlightens you just a little bit. But most importantly, we all should be operating from love. This is your host, Crystal Jordan, and I will see you guys right here next week for more Let's Get Crystal Clear.